What actually is our priority in accompanying our children on an alternative learning journey? Yeah, that is a big question, and I think it is very important to be clear on that, because if we're not, I think we're bound to get very, very confused and wobbly and shaky. What greatly influenced me and inspired me was finding a little educational project when my daughter was just 1 year old. That was roughly 19 years ago. And I was so impressed and inspired by their clarity, the degree of clarity of what actually the foundation of their approach was. In a few words, I would say they really focused on establishing a deep connection, a deep relationship with a child, entering the child's world, a relationship that was based in trust, in love, in respect, and that it would be ultra clear not to harm the kid in any shape or form. Now, if that's in place, then everything else falls into place, actually. Because now it's not possible anymore to focus on academic achievements, to identify so closely with the kid's performance that we would be willing to risk the relationship. And I think that for me played an absolutely crucial role in later on accompanying my own daughter on her journey. Because the child over time is going to get exposed to all kinds of opinions, right? All kinds of realities, all kinds of perspectives from all these different people. Now, initially, a child being on an off-road journey doesn't even know what concepts like making a living, getting a high school diploma, and all the rest of it, what does that even mean? Nothing. So the child will only actually sense people's energy, right? And will sense there's something really kind of, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of contraction and stuff, right? Now, it happened several times when my daughter was between 13 and 15, when parents actually signaled to her that they were interested, curious, and fascinated, right? But because they saw, wow, this kid is actually doing something completely different. So my daughter would open up to them and start sharing. And a few times, unfortunately, it happened that these people, after being initially fascinated and really open and curious, suddenly would turn around 180 degrees and try to convince her that whatever she was doing there would not work in the long run. And my daughter, every time that happened, I watched her being completely shocked and not understanding what just happened. So for me, that was the point where I would step in and just make people understand that they had just completely contradicted themselves. Yeah? And I basically asked them politely but very clearly to not impose their sense of reality on this child now. Yeah? Because just because you don't believe that something like this is possible doesn't mean that we have to convince, basically crush a young human being and discourage that young human being in that way, right? Because at that point she would not have been able to hold space for herself and to stand her ground, so to say, right? Because please keep in mind, when you interact with a child like that, none of the experiences that all of us have who have gone through the conventional educational system are there. None of it is there, right? And that is both the fascinating thing, what raises great curiosity in us, but at the same time also is the big challenge, because we don't really understand what kind of human being we're actually dealing with there, right? Because you might say things and just assume that the child, which at that point might be 15, will of course understand, but he or she will not. So for me, all these experiences they made it so clear to me that all these conditionings that we get going through the conventional educational system become like a veil, almost an invisible veil. And since we all perceive through that veil, it's very difficult to become aware of it. Yeah. Yeah, my hope is by sharing these kind of things that it's just an invitation. Yeah, I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. Take whatever resonates with you, forget about whatever doesn't, and I'm not trying to sell anything here. And the other day I heard somebody saying, yeah, but what you did, Robert, yeah, is not scalable. I'm not trying to scale anything. Totally on the contrary. I think small is beautiful. And I don't think anyways that any idea of finding a system, establishing a system that is bulletproof, where you can kind of tick the box and be done with it, not having to navigate anymore, not having to engage and be vulnerable in real time, that is an illusion. It's not going to work. That doesn't exist. Yeah, and I think the earlier we accept that this walking the tightrope, yeah, moment after moment, and just engaging again and again and again, and every time afresh, the earlier we accept that, the more beautiful that dance can be. Yeah. That's what I felt like sharing today, and all the best. Greetings from Goa.